I am joining you tonight under some very dark circumstances. Normally, I like to say we got a great show for you tonight, and I think it's going to be an excellent show, but of course, the news is unbelievably tragic. Tonight, as you know, you're all gathered here. We're going to talk tonight about the death of Charlie Kirk. And even saying that out loud, the words are still very surreal and disturbing. I said this last night and I meant it as I watched the chaos and the tragedy unfold yesterday afternoon. And I know everybody else feels exactly the same way. It didn't feel real. That's the characterization I keep seeing from everybody on TikTok, on Instagram, on Twitter. People have been profoundly affected by this, and we're not sure why. And hopefully we can talk a little bit about maybe why that is. But as I said yesterday, like many of you, I got the alert from a friend of mine who I believe was either at the event or had friends at the event at UVU in Utah. A friend of mine texted me and said, Charlie has been shot. I said, Charlie Kirk? They said, yes. And we watched it unfold live. We're still getting updates. We don't know exactly what transpired. And again, we'll get into some of that as well, some of the uncertainties and unanswered questions. But I am devastated and legitimately affected and struck viscerally. Such a sensational video, images, such an unspeakable, horrible tragedy. And I literally had to take a day to collect myself. Normally, this is a current events show. I'm live every night, and I discuss the news of the day, and I've been there through many of the big developments over the years. Same day, January 6th, Trump assassination attempt, the elections, the pandemic. But this one was different, and I think everybody feels that way about it. It felt like a nightmare. That's the only way that I can accurately describe it, actually. Throughout the entire day yesterday, I just could not process it. It did not sink in. It still hasn't fully sunk in. Like I said earlier, you say those words, the death of Charlie Kirk, the assassination of Charlie Kirk, the murder of Charlie Kirk. I watched his Wikipedia page go from Charlie Kirk is to Charlie Kirk was. It doesn't feel real. It feels like a nightmare that we'll never wake up from. And I say that as somebody who was not even a fan, not a friend, and actually an adversary, a foe. I can only imagine what his friends, his colleagues, and especially his wife, his young children, you can only imagine what they're going through. And so what happened yesterday is still so raw and so sensitive. The country is profoundly affected, at least some of it is. We'll talk about that too. And so tonight I'm going to try to the best of my ability, carry out my responsibility. I believe, and I think you know, that I'm somebody that many of the young people, young conservatives are looking up to. I have a lot of credibility with the far right, the radical right. And throughout his career, Charlie Kirk always characterized me as a troll. I don't say that with any malice at this point in time, but that's what he said. And many in Turning Point USA said that I and my followers are nihilistic. We only want destruction. And I think that I have an obligation to the country. I think I have an obligation to God. I think I have an obligation to all of you. I think I have responsibility to prove that that is not true.
Very good point Nick makes here, but Nick should also really watch out. And I don't have to explain you why, because we literally saw the example 2 days ago. And it's just insane. You can just look at his eyes. You can see how devastated Nick is about this. And I completely understand why. Me too. And probably you too. What happened is horrible. And then you see some people celebrating the death of Charlie Kirk. It's insane, and it just shows how many lunatics are still in our country. It's insane. But what he says here, And you all know Nick and Charlie were not the biggest friends. Actually, they were almost like enemies, or I would not say enemies, but they were not the biggest friends. Let's keep it like that. And Nick earns my respect with this. Like, seriously.
It's not about me, but now that it is the morning after, the day has dawned where Charlie Kirk is now dead at the hands of some unknown attacker. It is our responsibility, mine and all of ours, to step up and to get serious. To the extent that politics was fun or we took it lightly, I think we now realize it just got very real. It's been real. People talk about a civil war. They say a war is coming. Some say we're already in one. We have an obligation now. The leaders, the spokesmen, the men, the young men, the elderly men, we have an obligation to lead. And I want to start, before we get into any of it, by saying this, just as a general note. I've been around now for 7 or 8 years. That's not a very long time, but it's long enough. I've lived through a lot of these events, Charlottesville, January 6th, the Groyper War, many things. And I know that in my career, I've made a lot of mistakes. I've done things I regret, said things I regret. I've made a lot of the same mistakes twice. And I've been lucky because I've lived and I have this platform and I'm able to speak to all of you in spite of that. And I think maybe one of the reasons why is because I have been afforded the opportunity to learn a lot. Having been in the center of dissident right-wing politics, far-right politics, in the center of this cultural moment, whatever you want to call that, as an archetypal, disaffected young white man, angry young white man, Trump supporter, however you want to characterize that, I have been in the thick of it for a very long time.
And that's exactly why Nick Fuentes should also really watch out. We can't miss another soldier. Like, there's too many people. Like, just think about like the hit piece on Donald Trump. That was not even a year ago. Now Charlie Kirk. Nick should really watch out. Like, seriously, people, it's not like we're almost at war. I cannot say a different. I want to act nice and like everything is fine. It isn't. It isn't. Look what's happening in 1 year. It's insane. Insane.
And seeing many crises and tragedies and things that we cannot explain, things that are difficult to cope with. I will say first, as I said, as a general note before we move on, it cannot be overstated how important it is in a time like this to put our intentions in alignment with the will of God. Everybody's very emotional. Everybody is whipped up, and rightfully so, justifiably so. People are furious. I don't know that the left fully understands that. I don't know that normies fully understand that. People are absolutely beside themselves. I've never seen the right wing more angry, more furious, and this has been building. Here we are today, the day after Charlie Kirk has been killed, but we're starting here in the middle of the story. It's been going on for over a decade, and these things compound over time, and they accumulate. And I, like everybody else, recognize that this could potentially be a watershed moment. This is a ripple effect. We may look back in time and see a chain reaction, an inexorable chain reaction that leads to nothing other than destruction, devastation, bloodshed, misery. I don't think it's crazy to say millions of dead bodies. And we must have the prudence. We must have the confidence in our convictions, in our faith in God. This is the test. It's easy to believe in prayer when things are easy. It's easy to believe in God, mercy, forgiveness, temperance when things are easy. It's when things are hard, when they're confusing, when we feel justifiably angry, wrathful, prideful. That's the test. That's when it counts. And that is when mature people, and I recognize the folly in me saying that. I don't consider myself an extremely mature person. I think I'm a frivolous person in many ways. But it's an obligation for all of us to grow up now and recognize the gravity of the situation we're in, the peril that we're all in. And we have to ask ourselves, what are our intentions? We have to set them intentionally. We have to set them in alignment with God, with the gospel. We have to think not just about the present moment and what we're feeling, but about the long term, the good of our country, the good of our fellow countrymen, both the people we agree with and disagree with, our children, our progeny. And we have to think about that moment before God. We have to think about our moment before God in judgment. And we're asked about that golden rule. We don't save ourselves. We approach God with humility. We approach the judgment as weak, as mortal, fallen. Before we take up arms, before we relish in our anger and sit with it, sit with our rage and resentment and fuel it and get into these loops, feedback loops, I think it is so important. And this is why I said last night I wasn't going to do a show, and I really meant it. And I think everybody needed one night at least to sleep on this, to pray, and to pray not just for the repose of Charlie Kirk's soul and for his wife and for his 2 young children and for the people affected in his organization and for the people that were closest to him, but also to pray for the wisdom, the strength, the prudence, the humility, the fortitude.
I understand the point Nick is trying to make here. Don't get me wrong, but I'm getting so sick and tired of these things like we need to pray, we need to forgive more. Like seriously, look at Charlie Kirk, for example. He was praying 5 times a day. He just defended himself with words, with debates. He was talking to the people who disagreed with him, and look what happened to him. And he is not the only one. There's been way more examples. Donald Trump not even a year ago. And then it's so weak to say we need to pray and forgive more. That won't solve the problem. You have some people, they're so evil, they don't care how many times a day you pray or if you forgive them. They will do whatever they want. And we just saw this 2 days ago. This really has to stop. We can't continue living like this. Like Charlie Kirk was defending himself with words. Only with words. And people, they can debate him, so then they are doing this to him.
To approach this in the right way. Because how we respond to this tragedy, like all of these events, like all of the persecution, all of the suffering, the anguish, it will define us. It will define our country. It is life or death here. And what I am urging at the very outset of this, at the minimum, is caution. Let us not be hasty. If you're thinking of picking up arms, put them down. And if you can't be convinced altogether, put them down today. Put them down tomorrow. Let us be cautious. Let us be prudent. Let's think. Let's get right. Let's get right with God before we act hastily. And the reason I say that I have come to this reaction over many years, seeing many crises, is because not only is there a spiritual dimension to all of this, and the devil uses our emotions against us, uses our best intentions, our best inclinations against us to doubt our faith in God, that God is both just and merciful, our faith in God, that he will deliver the vengeance that we are told is not in our hands, trust in his plan and not create our own. It's not just for the spiritual reasons, but also for the political reasons. Ask yourself, we all recognize this is a watershed moment. We're never going back from this. This is the shot heard around the world, literally. One shot, one kill, an international incident, and a outpouring of both love and affection in the vigils that you see for Charlie Kirk across the country, but also in anger and resentment, hatred, people ridiculing his death, all of these different things. It's important also to understand that politically, it is in crises like these when we become instrumentalized by forces outside of our control. When we take our eye off the ball, and I don't want to be too explicit at this moment now, but when we take our eye off the ball because of something so sensational, because of something so emotionally charged, that's why they do these things. That's why supernatural as well as societal forces do these things or capitalize them and take advantage of them. And people, guided perhaps by good intentions or righteous indignation, become unwitting instruments of forces beyond their control, beyond their understanding. They become pawns in a larger game. And so, in order for us not to be agents of evil, a supernatural evil, a worldly evil, in order for us not to be instrumentalized by sophisticated and powerful forces that would use this tragedy to manipulate society for its own ends, in order to save our souls from the kind of wrath, anger, vengefulness that will surely land us a seat in hell, I would first say, before I say anything else, especially to the young people, the adolescents, that I understand how you feel, lay down your arms. Those that live by the sword will perish by the sword. Remember what Christ said. This is our cup to drink from, all of us. Death, suffering, martyrdom in some cases. It's all part of it. It's all part of life. And not to be fatalistic and not to minimize it, but as a Christian, we can't always talk about the prosperity gospel. We can't always talk about making money or prosperity and the kumbaya. We also have to talk about the other side of things, which is that we have a Lord and Savior that was crucified on the cross by our sins, by our own iniquities, all of us, and not just the killers and the scoundrels and not just the obviously evil people, but also sometimes ourselves. Assuredly, everybody, you and I, everybody. So we have to take those things into consideration. We have to be humble about these things. And so that's just a word of caution. That's me trying to do my best to be responsible here before we get into the larger subject.
I wish Nick told this earlier to them, that maybe Charlie would still be alive right now. Because the people who are angry now, you should ask yourself why they are angry. Because something happens to Charlie, not the other way around.
So we'll talk about it now. As you know, Charlie Kirk was assassinated yesterday afternoon doing one of his Change My Mind events, his college tour. It was one of the first stops on his new college tour in Utah. Started out like any other day. And I'm sure for him it was just another day. He's done this hundreds of times. He got dressed, he went to the event, talked it up with politicians and friends of his, said this is going to be a great event, filmed TikToks, and all of a sudden a shot rang out. He died, I assume, instantly, although some of the details are uncertain. People fled. He's now gone. And the first thing I want to say about it after the word of caution is this. Of course, as I said, I was not a friend of Charlie Kirk's at all. I didn't like him. He didn't like me. We had a lot of differences, ideologically, politically, and we fought viciously. He did a lot to stifle my career and suppressed me in many ways, and I antagonized him a lot and mocked him and ridiculed him and attacked his credibility. He was my opponent. But I would never wish death upon him or anything like that. And Charlie Kirk never had a kind word to say about me in his life. Now that he has died, I'll say some kind words about him. Although I didn't agree with him, I considered him a part of the political establishment. In many ways, I considered him part of the problem. In spite of that, it is undeniable that he was a towering figure in American conservatism. It's undeniable. He was ambitious. He was a hard worker. He did things I cannot do. A lot of people said after his passing, I saw some people make oblique references to it. They said, well, if Charlie Kirk was assassinated, now the far right will step up. I don't know that there's anyone that could fill his shoes. I don't know that there's anyone that can do what he did. He died at 31 years old and left a legacy that many people could not achieve in many lifetimes. He hosted a show 3 hours a day. He went and faced down his enemies in debate. He would take on almost any challengers. I say almost because he wouldn't debate me, of course, but nevertheless, would debate anybody, anywhere, stare them down, and people don't know how difficult that is. He would sit there for hours on any subject, and then he would return home from the command center and direct the largest youth organization, the most ambitious project in conservative politics maybe ever, and he did it all before the age of 31. An absolutely brilliant, sharp, fierce warrior for his values and his beliefs. And as I said, I disagreed with them strongly. I'll make no bones about that, and that hasn't changed.
And Nick really earns my respect for saying all these things. Like he also just mentioned, they were not the biggest friends, like completely the opposite. And saying this about Charlie Kirk, very good, Nick. And also probably you, I don't know. Some people, they agree with Charlie, some they disagree with Charlie, some love him, some hate him. But you don't wish this to anyone. Anyone. He has 2 children, he had a young wife, he was still 31 years old. If you agree with him, if you disagreed with him, this should have never ever happened to him. And Nick earns my respect for saying these things. Good job, man.
But you have to admire that this was a fighter, this was a worker, this was a champion, and above all else, maybe this is what I respected about him the most. We had our disagreements. Where we did agree is that he would go to these college campuses and proclaim the name of Jesus Christ. And ultimately, that is why he was killed. Everyone will be persecuted for the sake of Jesus Christ. Anyone, everyone, fighting and winning that spiritual battle for Christ and for his kingdom will be persecuted for his sake. And I don't believe Charlie Kirk was any different. We disagreed on much, but we agreed about abortion. We agreed about feminism. We agreed about many of the other moral, social ills of the country. And when you look at his most vicious detractors, the people celebrating his death now, possibly, probably, the gunmen that killed him, they hated him because of his defense of Christian morality. He wasn't killed necessarily, perhaps, by a socialist or by someone who disagreed about his position on fiscal policy. And this is something I think we all need to take into account, something we need to be aware of and notice. The most vicious, hateful opponents of the conservative movement of all stripes, they are the ones championing transgenderism, which goes by another name, mutilation of the body, a disordering of the soul. It's the proponents of abortion, which is some form of child sacrifice, at the minimum, infanticide. These are the most vicious, violent, hateful detractors of even a moderate conservative like Charlie Kirk because he stood up for those biblical values. I'll say it better, Christian values, Christian morality for Christ himself, for the truth incarnate. And for that, I consider him a true martyr.
This is exactly what I just want to say. Charlie Kirk is a martyr for what he did and where he died for. Charlie Kirk is a martyr. Rest in peace, Charlie Kirk, like for real. It almost hurts me to say this, but rest in peace, Charlie Kirk.
And I hope his reward is in heaven. I'll also say he was clearly a loving father, a loving husband, He was beloved by millions of people. That is obvious. And although I do not count myself among his fans, it was clear that millions upon millions of decent, earnest, good people, Christians, patriots, Charlie Kirk was a good man. God bless him. And despite our differences, our past debates, I consider that over. And I pray for the repose of his soul, for his family, for him. That's Charlie Kirk. Now, aside from that, it's important to say that it's obviously a horrific thing. And I think that what is so striking about it is because it became so real in that moment. It was such a graphic video. This is somebody that we felt like we all knew. I never met him. I never shook his hand. I never spoke with him. I saw him, and I've been at arm's length with him before, but I never knew him. But to us, he was imminent. He was ubiquitous. He was all over TikTok, making content. He was synonymous with campus conservatism. And like many personalities, politicians, the kind of medium that he used, social media, live streaming, we all developed a parasocial relationship with him. And whether we loved him or we hated him, he was known to us. And other people that we know die, but they die in hospitals or they die when we're not looking. He was publicly executed, suddenly, unexpectedly, in front of millions of people on camera. And we saw in graphic detail his life end that way. I think that's why this is having such a profound effect on people. And the reason that it has shaken everybody to their core, and in some ways, unconscionably has become divisive somehow, is because there are a lot of decent people still left in this country. And maybe they're right wing and maybe they're left wing and maybe they voted for Trump and maybe they didn't. But in that moment, when they saw this young man, this young father, this young husband, a good man, a congenial, by every metric, a positive, cheerful person, a generative person, someone who loved America, fought for what he believed in, a disciplined person, did not indulge in vices, a family man, to see someone like this gunned down in cold blood in such a cowardly act from such a distance like that. In that moment, what was confusing before about our country, what was divisive before, where there was moral confusion or obfuscation, there was clarity. And I don't care who you voted for. I don't care what your politics are. People, white and black, men and women.
Charlie Kirk defended himself only with words, with debating people. You could disagree with him, he would still debate you. And this is why Charlie Kirk is such a hero. Whatever you said, he will talk with you, he would debate you. And then you have people, they are too weak to debate him for the things where they disagree with, and then they will use violence. And this caused the end of his life. And it's like, I don't even have words for it. There are so many people, exactly probably like me, they are so hurt by the death of Charlie Kirk. And I will just leave it. Like it's like, I don't even have a word for it. Like what happens, you almost can describe it. And for sure, some people here, they know the feeling exactly where I talk about. We lost such a big soldier. We lost almost one of the biggest soldiers. And Nick should really watch out. Be very careful. So the same thing doesn't happen with him. Because I'm sure there's also crazy people walking around who are searching for Nick Fuentes to do maybe completely the same as they did with Charlie Kirk. So please, Nick, watch out, bro.
Feminists, conservatives, people that are straight, people that are gay. I saw across Instagram, TikTok, a good deal of people, I hope the majority in this country, were shaken to their core because they saw true evil. When the assassin's bullet cracked and the shot rang out and people saw this young, good man die for no good reason, someone knowable to us, every decent person that still has a conscience and I choose to use that word, everyone with a conscience was able to say clearly, that is evil, that is wrong. It is wrong to violate the sanctity of life in that way. Our lives are not our own. We belong to each other. We belong to God. We did not create ourselves. We belong to our Creator. To see another human being, I don't care what they've said in the past. I don't care what their opinions are. To see someone summarily executed in such a brutal way like that, there was a moment of clarity where people saw, and this is an all too familiar sight, people saw evil, and it shocked them to their core. People saw true evil, weakness, cowardice, violence, hatred, taking away someone who loved and was loved for no reason, unjustly. And people reacted with sorrow, outrage, anger, made people sick. It shook people up because we were born with a moral law written on our hearts. It's not just written in the Gospels. It's not just written in the lives of the saints. It's also written on our hearts. We know right from wrong. We know it when we see it. We feel it. We feel it on a deeper level. It makes us physiologically sick to see it. I think that's why it had such a profound impact. And the reason that it has people so shaken up, another reason, as I said before, is because this is the middle of a very long story. As we all know, this did not come out of nowhere. There were many events that precipitated this. We can talk about the attempted assassination of Donald Trump last year when he was shot in the ear, and his display of strength, of courage, in the face of a cowardly attack, inspired millions of people, billions of people around the world. They saw that little twerp, that coward that climbed up on the roof and took a shot. And they saw Trump in that moment who had nothing on his mind other than that he needed to reassure his people, show them he was not defeated or deterred. He rose up and raised his fist, rallied the people to the side of strength, of goodness, of righteousness. He survived by the grace of God. We saw it when Luigi Mangione gunned down the healthcare CEO months later. And like the attack on Charlie Kirk yesterday, the attack by Luigi Mangione was another chain reaction. In that moment, we saw a young man kill a father, a husband, another innocent. Once again, people say he worked for some company, he worked for an evil industry. Shot in cold blood, no trial, no charge. His life was not Luigi Mangione's to take. And for some reason, this divided the country. There were millions of people that said he was a hero, treated him like
The people who are like giving excuses for things like this, like almost murdering someone, like a father, the president, or Charlie Kirk. And then you have people online who use like the most crazy excuses. It was fine because of this. It was fine because he said this or he said that online. It doesn't matter. If you are a real human, you can debate each other. You can disagree with someone. You can talk it out. You can even put your frustrations online like I am doing now. That's all fine. But you don't use violence. And the last thing is what you're going to do is shoot someone from the back like a coward. Sorry, but it's like frustrating me so much. All these things, like what Nick just mentioned here, the hit piece on Donald Trump, the hit piece on this other man, the father, like the hit piece on Charlie Kirk, or like the murder of Charlie Kirk. Those are not coincidences anymore. You can see it it happens in 1 year. All these things happen in 1 year. And people are acting like, oh, it's still fine. We live in such a safe country, such a peaceful country. The reality shows it isn't that peaceful. It isn't fine. We have some real problems over here. And people will talk about this now for 1 week, maybe 2 weeks, then they forget about it. They just continue their life. They just do whatever they were doing before. And maybe something like this will happen in a couple weeks again, in 2 months. Things really need to change.
Like a sex icon, a champion. They made t-shirts. They celebrated. Is anybody surprised now that you have incidents like this? Is anybody the least bit surprised? In a culture where mass murder and murder is celebrated, people cheer it on, they lionize cowardly assassins and killers. Is anybody the least bit surprised that it inspired a copycat? It inspired another?
Exactly, yeah.
It shouldn't come as a surprise. But there's other echoes of the violence that we saw yesterday. We saw it imminently just the other week when that young girl, the Ukrainian refugee, was stabbed to death on the train. We saw it when Austin Metcalf was stabbed in the throat at a football practice. We see it in Gaza for years when innocent people are shot in the back of the head getting food for their children because they're starving. The weight of the suffering, the cruelty, the malice, the hatred, it's becoming too much to bear. I think that's the real reason. Because we've seen violence before. We've seen horrible atrocities before.
It's so horrible what happened. And like, don't get me wrong, I wish I could make a better video today, but this is just a sad reality we live in today. Like, I feel sorry for Charlie. I feel sorry for his family. I feel sorry for everyone who supported him. I feel sorry for you. I feel sorry even for myself. Like I'm devastated by this. Like, it hurts my feelings like so much, and it will still for the next few months, maybe years. Like, what happened, it's horrible, and this just shows like the sad reality we live in today, like how broken this world is, and we lost a great soldier, we lost a warrior, but this only supports me more to like spreading his words, spreading like all the things what's happening. This is the main reason why I started this channel, because literally this can't go on. It can't go on like this. Some things really have to change, and like it's just, I can describe with words like how I feel. You probably understand the point, and it's just sad. Like, I hate to say it, but like, if you like this video, please hit the like button. If you really like this video, consider subscribing. I would really appreciate it. And last but not least, guys, rest in peace, Charlie Kirk. I wish all the best wishes for his family, for everyone, and that's just it, man. I'll see you in the next one. Have a wonderful day. Ciao.